Hello and welcome to Days of Roar, a Detroit Tigers podcast brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. I'm your host, Tigers beat writer Evan Petzold. As always, I'm joined by Chris Brown from Tigers Minor League Report. Chris Brown, how are you doing? And are you counting down the days until your arrival to Tiger Town here in Lakeland, Florida?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing great. Thank you. I actually am flying to New York tomorrow, but then come back and then down to Florida for spring training. And I'm very eager to get down there for sure.
Only a matter of time before both the Days of Roar boys are in Tiger Town. All right, let's get into the news that we've been waiting for. Tarik Skubal will not pitch a second game for Team USA in the World Baseball Classic. And I want to start by saying we recorded a segment with Bob Nightengale, USA Today, MLB columnist and insider that you'll hear later in the show. We recorded that on Monday morning, about 7 hours before the Skubal decision became official. Now, we talked a lot about the latest regarding Skubal's contract situation with the Tigers, with some new information provided by Bob Nightengale. So stick around for that. And then you can also hear if we were right or if we were wrong about Skubal's plan with Team USA in the World Baseball Classic. But the news is Tarik Skubal is returning Tuesday to the Tigers in spring training. He will not pitch again for Team USA. He made his first and only start last Saturday against Great Britain, throwing 41 pitches across 3 innings. He gave up the solo home run to the leadoff hitter in the first inning, and then he settled in, and he was vintage Tarik Skubal, absolutely dominant. The plan was always for Skubal to be one and done with Team USA and the WBC. That was agreed upon by Tarik Skubal, the Tigers, his agent, Scott Boras. But after being around those guys and being with that team, Skubal wanted to pitch again. And as we discussed with Bob Nightengale, it likely would have been in the WBC championship game. But if he would have pitched in the March 17th championship game, then it would have been practically impossible for him to start for the Tigers on March 26th, which is opening day against the San Diego Padres. If you start March 17th in the WBC, it's not going to line up for you to start March 26th for the Tigers on opening day. So that was a decision that Skubal had to make. Team USA or Team Tigers. And obviously he talked to the Tigers and he talked to agent Scott Boras. And he ultimately decided to return to the Tigers in spring training, which was the plan all along. It was a really difficult decision for Skubal. And he was already taking a big risk by pitching in this like WBC environment, which is an intense environment. If you're watching these games on TV, this is not like spring training games. These are like World Series games with the environment from the fans, the environment from the pitchers. I mean, you're seeing guys like Bryce Harper at first base, like pumping his fist after turning a double play. The emotions are real. The environment is real. And Skubal is set to be a free agent. After the 2026 season, he projects to become the first pitcher in MLB history to secure at least $400 million in free agency. So there was already a big risk by just making one start, but now it's official. There won't be a second start for Skubal with Team USA. That's the latest.
Yeah, it's funny that the discourse around it has been a lot stranger than I expected. A lot of people, I think, as soon as he started saying that he might do it, there was this kind of backlash against him, like when he decided he wasn't going to. But yeah, the Tigers are more important, obviously. Like getting that opening day start, that's the big thing there. And I totally understand, you're there in that environment with those other, best of the best players in the world. You're going to get the competitor in you is going to want to keep competing. It's a terrible metaphor, but it kind of reminds me of you're out at the bar with your buddies and you got to work tomorrow morning and you're having a great time. And, if you go home now, it's the responsible thing. But boy, there's a lot of things telling you to stay there and stay till 3 a.m. or whatever. So he made the responsible decision here and hopefully he doesn't regret it. And if he does, he can always go back and pitch in a few years. So no big deal.
Shot for shot is always dangerous when you're out at the bar with the boys. Speaking of dangerous, Kevin McGonigle is dangerous, and he is going international with his success in the 2-game exhibition series against Team Dominican Republic. That was Tuesday and Wednesday last week. Look, the Kevin McGonigle show, it rolls on. He went with the Tigers to the Dominican Republic for that 2-game exhibition series, and he went 3 for 5 with 1 home run, 2 walks, and 2 strikeouts in those 2 games. But the biggest moment happened as the leadoff hitter and shortstop in the first game. He hit a first pitch 98-mile-an-hour fastball from Luis Severino for a leadoff home run in the first inning. He pulled it 461 feet to right field with a 110-mile-an-hour exit velocity. And then, oh, by the way, later in that game, a 2-run single, a 5-pitch walk, a leadoff single. Those were his 4 plate appearances in game 1 of that exhibition series. If you combine spring training and the exhibition series, Kevin McGonigle has played 12 games this spring. The 21-year-old is hitting .400. That's 10 for 25 with 2 home runs, 5 walks, and 7 strikeouts in those 12 games, spanning 31 plate appearances. We're doing this every week, and last week we got to the point where both of us had him on the opening day roster. I think I was leaning that way a few weeks ago, and then closer and closer, and then I finally was like, okay, he's got to be on it. And then sure enough, you were right along on that as well. We'll go back to the Chris Brown meter here. Do you still have him on your opening day roster? Why or why not?
Absolutely. If he doesn't make the roster, it's not because of anything he's done on the field. He's looked like one of the best players in the entire camp. And it's on both sides of the ball. He looked good at shortstop. That was my one main concern. He looks more fluid, more athletic out there. He's making all the plays. And the offense has been remarkable. The plate appearances are really consistent. I actually went through and I looked. I was like, all right, let's see. Who's he putting these numbers up against? Is it big leaguers or is it minor leaguers? And, the big leaguers are of different quality, but I looked and he's 7 for 18 against guys who pitched in the big leagues last year, and Cody Ponce, who is going to be in the big leagues this year, with a homer, a triple, a double, and 5 walks and 5 strikeouts against the big leaguers. So he's 3 for 7 against the minor leaguers, but he's doing this against, legit pitchers for the most part. None more than obviously getting 98-mile-an-hour fastball from Luis Severino and hit it 460 feet. That's really, really impressive. You pointed out that he's had struggled a little bit against some changeups, which is, if you want to make a big deal out of that, if the Tigers want to keep him down.
I was trying to find something, that's all, because I'm running out of things to put against Kevin McGonigle. Like everything that I'm seeing on the field says this guy is ready. Maybe changeups, that's something that he could see once he gets to the big leagues. They may change up him to death until he makes the adjustment, but we've seen this guy make adjustments before. I'm not worried about it. It's just something that I've noticed.
Yeah, no, and to your point, that it really is. I mean, he got a couple of Brian Bayo changeups there, and those were, it's the 32% whiff rate pitch for him last year in the big leagues. Like you're just not going to, if that's your weakness, you're not going to fix that in the minor leagues. You don't see these pitches in the minor leagues. And then the one on Monday, Shane McClanahan, a lefty, hit him with back-to-back same side changeups, which I don't think he ever would have expected in a million years. So he's getting an education, and he's gonna struggle at times in the big leagues because he's the best of the best. But nothing he's shown me so far suggests that he won't be able to overcome it and adjust, like you said.
I dropped my opening day roster prediction 2.0 last Thursday, and I put Kevin McGonigle on my opening day roster. And I took Parker Meadows off the roster to make room for McGonigle. So that's where I'm at. Like I said, Kevin McGonigle, he has passed every on-field test in camp, and he also looks comfortable around big leaguers behind the scenes. He just continues to show why he belongs on the opening day roster. So he's given me no reason to keep him off the opening day roster, even though he hasn't played above Double-A Erie. But we'll get to more on the McGonigle situation in a little bit. We'll go from the youngster to the veteran, Justin Verlander. He made his first spring training start, and then he talked about how the 2026 season could be his final season. As for the start, before we get into what Verlander said, he took the mound last Friday against the Red Sox at Joker Marchant Stadium, and it was an incredible scene. He got 4 standing ovations from the fans, including a standing ovation before he even took the mound, and then he got one after each of his innings when he came off the field. He acknowledged the fans several times, which I thought was pretty cool. You can definitely tell that he is soaking this in. Before we get to that, he allowed 2 runs on 2 hits across 2+ innings, throwing 50 pitches. He also had 2 walks and 4 strikeouts. The Tigers used the re-entry rule, which is allowed in spring training, with 1 out in the first inning. That allowed them to remove Verlander after 22 pitches, of which 10 were foul balls, and then put him back in the game at the start of the second inning. And he looked much improved in the second and third innings, especially once he got his slider dialed in. The underlying stuff was good. It was 11 whiffs on 28 swings. That's a nearly 40% whiff rate. The fastball averaged 94 miles an hour, maxed out at 95.4 miles an hour. Those are all good signs for the first start of spring training for a 43-year-old Justin Verlander. I'm really excited to see how he builds on that in his next start. But as for what he said, you can tell all of this is just tugging on his emotions quite a bit. And it sounds like he plans to carry that into the regular season. Here's what Verlander said.
You mentioned the emotions a couple of times. Are you at all surprised about how many have stirred up since you've been back in Detroit?
No, I don't think so. I'm an emotional person. I don't think it's caught me by surprise at all. Walking in the field today, I think walking to the dugout got me a little bit. That maybe surprised me a tad, but I just kind of embrace that, and it's who I am, and it's fun. It's nostalgic for a good reason. I don't know how much longer I'm going to play. Like I'm not sitting here saying I came back here this year and this is it and I want to retire. I don't know. But I know there's not a lot of time left. So, especially in the great scheme of things, if I play for another 2 years, 3, whatever it is, like out of 21, it's like nothing. So I'm just trying to enjoy it a little more.
Is it easier to do that in spring training compared to regular season?
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's also something I want to carry into the season. To what extent, I don't know. Just being present and just like kind of enjoying it. And I say this, but I don't want to sit here and sound like this is it. Like it could be, it's a 1-year contract. Like if something catastrophic goes wrong, or like I can't be that, like that's it, man. Like I'm done. So all I know is like there's not that much time left. So enjoy it while you can. And I've paid attention to what some of the old guys have said that have been around a long time, and especially guys that were very intense. I think one of the things that's a common theme amongst those guys is they wish they enjoyed it a little more towards the end. I respect my elders. I respect my peers. I listen to what they have to say. And I think at this point in my career, like what made me be so intense early on, like that what I needed to get out of that, like I got it. I don't need to be that intense anymore to be able to go out and compete. So I'm hopeful that all these. The reason I was so intense on start day is because I couldn't turn the bell on. Like I just it wasn't part of me. I think I've gotten better at that. I don't know. Like we'll see how it goes.
Does that mean the whole come into the club?
Oh no, I'll have my headphones on for sure. Yeah. I just won't be as angry.
AJ said he didn't talk to you.
Yeah, I talked to AJ.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's just like less angry. I know. I don't know. We'll see. If I feel like I need it, I can use that. I just like I said, you have to adapt and change, and it's something that I've given more effort to, especially last year. Like that's one of the things that I think shows me that I can do it. Is I was able to pitch successful down the end. Early in the year, like I wasn't pitching well, and like things weren't going well. Some of the stuff with the team, and it was like I think guys were a little too anxious everybody knows like wins are important for me, and when they kind of started going the other way, and like when I did pitch well, it was things went wrong, and it was like, man, maybe I should be less so that they feel a little more comfortable, and I was fine, pitched well down the stretch like that. So
yeah, it's still just fun hearing Verlander, knowing he's back on the Tigers. It's just it's fun hearing his voice, hearing his perspective. And what you hear there, I think, is just kind of a classic case of like an older, wiser veteran. He's seen everything now, and he has a proper perspective. He doesn't have to amp himself up, or I don't think that was ever artificial. I think that's just who he was. But I guess he's mellowed a little bit in his age, and I think that should help him a lot this year. It should be a great resource for other players in the locker room. He's I looked it up. He's the 8th 40-year-old to play for the Tigers in the last 45 years. So it's a rare treat to get a guy come back that age and still be a useful player. So it's fun hearing him talk.
I think that's just a living legend who knows the reality of his situation. We know he wants to get to 300 wins. He needs 34 more wins to get there. That probably means 3 more seasons, including this season. But like he said, if there's a serious injury or if he struggles with his performance, this could be the end of his career. He isn't going to go through another major surgery in the ensuing rehab process. So I think he's preparing for this to be his final season. And then if he gets through the season and he can keep going, then he's going to do that, likely either with the Tigers or the Astros for the remainder of his career. I know that's how he'd like it. Let's get into some roster moves here in spring training. Some notable roster moves over the past week. Kiter Montero, Drew Summers, Hao-Yu Lee, Eduardo Valencia, Thyron Lorenzo, option to the minor leagues. Max Clark and Jose Briseño reassigned to minor league spring training. The big names for me, it's Kader Montero and Drew Summers. I had both of them on my opening day roster projection at certain points in time. So I guess that tells you what I know, or at least what I think I know. Maybe not very much. But look, I think Kader Montero is a reliever, and I think the Tigers know he is a reliever in the long term. But when Troy Melton went down with the elbow injury, and we still have no update there, by the way, the Tigers needed to protect their rotation. So instead of moving Montero to the bullpen or even considering a move to the bullpen for Montero, the Tigers optioned him to Triple-A Toledo so he can prepare as a starter, making him their sixth starter, aka the next man up in the rotation going into the regular season. But that would have been Troy Melton had he been healthy. But when Melton suffered the elbow injury, Kader Montero has to be that sixth starter. So when you put it that way, I'm not surprised the Tigers optioned Kader Montero because they're keeping him as a starter to protect the depth of their rotation. But if Melton returns to full health, even if it's not soon, even if it's mid-season, he's able to get back and get on the mound as a starter at the Triple-A level. And if Melton is able to become that true sixth starter for you, then maybe Kader Montero eventually transitions to the bullpen at some point this season. And that's when I think he could become a true weapon for the Tigers. Until then, I think Montero is just a below average starter. And I don't really want below average starters pitching for teams with championship aspirations. I think Montero could be a real weapon out of the bullpen, but that's not how the Tigers are going to go with it entering the regular season. As for Drew Summers, his option to Triple-A Toledo, that leaves the door open for a different lefty reliever to join the Tigers on the opening day roster, assuming the Tigers want a third lefty to join Tyler Holton and Brant Herter in the 8-man bullpen. I think we're going to see Drew Summers again in the big leagues, but he's going to have to earn his way back with success at the Triple-A level. Those are the two that stand out to me, at least for opening day roster considerations, but obviously some really big names on that list that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I mean, people saw Max Clark getting sent back to minor league camp and had some fun with it, I guess. He's been a little bit of a lightning rod this spring training. But yeah, you touched on it. I think Montero was mildly surprising just because I thought he might have a chance to win the bullpen spot, but you spelled it out there. They need some innings just in case it's an emergency situation. And I felt the same way about Summers. He remains a very interesting lefty with outlier extension and a funky arm angle that hitters don't see. He just needs to throw strikes. I think was 4 strikeouts in 3 innings, no hits, but walked 4, hit 2, and threw a wild pitch. He just needs to stay in the zone more. And if he does that in Triple-A, he'll be back because it's a good arm.
I think we do need to talk about Max Clark at least briefly. Yes, he has been reassigned to minor league camp. Meanwhile, his buddy Kevin McGonigle remains in major league camp. I think that bodes well for Kevin McGonigle's opening day roster chances as well. But look, Max Clark, he went 2 for 18 with 1 walk and 5 strikeouts in 9 games, including 0 for 13 in his final 7 games. He also made multiple mistakes defensively, both in left field and center field. You've seen him more than I have and more than most Tigers fans have in the minor leagues. But after what you saw in spring, combined with what you've seen in the minor leagues, are you at all worried that Max Clark might just be an average player in the big leagues rather than this superstar player that you'd expect him to be as a former number 3 overall draft pick with his type of aura? Because when I think of Max Clark, right now at least, I think he can be a productive player in the big leagues, but I'm just not expecting him to become a superstar after what I've seen. And that's both in Double-A Erie last year and now in MLB spring training this year. But you've seen him more than I have. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. I don't think there's a superstar in the making there. I think the tools aren't quite loud enough, but I do think still has all-star upside and an important top of the order type hitter. I think it was pretty clear that he started pressing early on in spring. I think, you remember his first hits were in like his first 2 games, and one of them was an infield single, and the other one was like a big RBI knock with 2 outs in the 9th, I think, to tie the game. And that's the sort of stuff I'm used to seeing him do, coming through in the clutch. And the main thing is, he walks a lot. He's a very patient hitter, works long at bats. And I think he was just pressing in spring, which is something that I was curious to see for all these young guys heading into spring training. And I think he got out over, ahead of himself a little bit. And I'm not worried about it at all. He turned 21 a couple months ago. He would be in this year's draft had he gone to college. So he's right on time, or right on track to be a contributor. I expect that he will get to the big leagues at some point this year, probably August, if his season trends like the last 2 have, where he tends to get off to slow starts. And then around June, he really picks it up. And by July and August, he's looks like a monster player. So not too worried. And I'm not worried about him trying to get better. He works really hard. So yeah, but I think your point, yeah, like when you're drafted 3rd overall, there's these expectations, and I don't think those are necessarily realistic. He's not going to be this guy who hits 30 home runs and steals 30 bases in the same season, but he's still going to be a very valuable big leaguer, I think.
We also need to mention the Josue Briseño injury news. He underwent right wrist surgery. It's going to keep him out for 3 to 4 months. It happened on a swing, and he happened to need surgery to fix an issue with the tendon in his right wrist. So he's going to be out, and he will stay in Lakeland throughout the rehab process. When healthy, I'm expecting him to return to Double-A Erie. And I also think Max Clark will return to Double-A Erie as well, but we'll see on that. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I have Clark penciled in for Erie right now, partially because, generally speaking, under Scott Harris, they've treated Toledo like the shuttle service, right? Like if there's an injury at the big league level, they want somebody who's going to come up and play, somebody who's already in the 40-man roster, or somebody that they can bring up and then release if they have to. So I'm picturing, Wenceel Pérez, Parker Meadows, Trey Cruz, somebody like that playing center in Toledo, and Clark down in Erie for a couple of months at least, probably till June or July, and then up to Toledo.
All right, let's get into the big two. Question 1 of the big two. It's time to talk about the relievers. Who do we think is locked in for the bullpen, and who do we think will win the final spots? For me, I have Kenley Jansen, Kyle Finnegan, Will Vest, Tyler Holton, and Drew Anderson as my 5 locks. And then I have Brant Herter and Brennan Hanafy as my near locks. And then for the final spot, here's a name for you, Burch Smith. I have Burch Smith as the final reliever in the 8-man bullpen. Obviously, there are a lot of names who could fit for the final bullpen spot, but I like what I've seen from Burch Smith. He's a right-handed reliever, so that means as of now, I'm expecting the Tigers to carry 2 lefty relievers on the opening day roster, not 3 lefty relievers. That's something we've been following, partially because the Tigers have righties who can get lefties out, like Drew Anderson with his changeup, Kyle Finnegan with his splitter, Kenley Jansen with his cutter. So for those reasons, I think the Tigers can have a bullpen with 6 righties and 2 lefties. As for Burch Smith, he's thrown 4 innings while allowing 2 runs with 0 walks and 5 strikeouts. The fastball is averaging 94, 95 miles an hour with a 36% whiff rate. He also throws a curveball, cutter, changeup, and sinker. So it's a lot of different pitches coming at you. He dominated this past offseason in the Dominican Winter League, working as a closer there. So he has experience in high leverage situations in intense environments. I mean, there is no more intense environment in an off-season setting than the Dominican Winter League. Like, you want to go there to play baseball, it's going to be loud and it's going to be intense. Burch Smith delivered as a closer there in that league. So I really like Burch Smith as the 8th and final reliever in the Tigers bullpen, but there are other names who could fit. Bo Brisky, Sean Gunther, Connor Pilkington, Tanner Rainey, among others. Maybe even Enmanuel De Jesus, though I think he might fit better stretched out as a starter in Triple-A Toledo. But the Tigers have plenty of options for the final spot in the bullpen. I just like Burch Smith right now.
Yeah, we're pretty much in lockstep here. I have the same locks for sure. Jansen, Finnegan, Vest, Holton, Anderson. I put like 75% on Brant Herter. I'm pretty sure he's going, but you never know. He didn't have a great time in the DR. And then Brendan Hanafy, I have about 50%. But again, I think those 2 are pretty solid. And then, yeah, for me, it came down to 2 lefties for the last spot. I have liked what I've seen from Burch Smith. I thought Ricky Vanasco looked really nasty the last time out, but he always looks nasty. He just doesn't always throw strikes. Then that's kind of the same case with like Tanner Rainey. It's like you can't really trust that. And Tyler Madison, a prospecty young guy. He's kind of the right-handed version of Drew Summers. He's got this wacky outlier stuff, but just not enough strikes, but maybe down the road. So yeah, for me, it comes down to De Jesus and Sean Gunther. They're not, that sexy, but De Jesus has been really good in spring training and in Venezuela. He's been striking guys out, would be another nice long man to have in the bullpen, give you 9 outs if you need, and he can get lefties and righties out. Maybe it's a bit redundant having Drew Anderson, who could probably give you multiple innings, and Brant Herter too. But if you got a 43-year-old in the rotation, it doesn't hurt to have multiple guys who can go several innings just in case. And then, yeah, with Sean Gunther has been good in spring training, but it's Sean Gunther good. And I don't mean that as like a backhanded compliment, but it's like 3+ innings, 1 hit, no walks, no strikeouts, just a bunch of ground balls. And like, Yeah, I mean, we've seen him pitch well before, and so I think he's got a chance, but there's not a ton of upside there. So I don't know, if he's, I wouldn't give him the spot right now. So I think I'd give it to De Jesus, but like you said, maybe they want him, Montero, to have more innings in case they need a starter.
Brendan Hanafy is an interesting one for me. I know I said I have him as a near lock. You said you had him at 50%. When he faces right-handed hitters, 220 batting average, 550 OPS. That is right-handed hitters against Brendan Hanafy. When he faces left-handed hitters, it is a 375 batting average and a 1,000 OPS. That is left-handed hitters against Brendan Hanafy. So this is a guy who shuts down righties, but he gets absolutely demolished by left-handed hitters. And in this era that we're in, where you have to face three batters when you come in, like the three batter minimum exists for a reason. If you're going to start an inning, you've got to face three batters. That's a dangerous situation with how much teams are mixing and matching off the bench. You look at what AJ Hinch does, the lefties that he has on the bench that he's able to deploy, or the righties that he's able to deploy to face lefties, whatever it may be. The Tigers have options on their bench. So do many other teams. I wonder if that puts Brendan Hanafy in a tough spot. I think you can carry one of those types of relievers on your opening day roster because you can hide him just enough, and you can hope that you get him in the right pocket where you can get him a pocket of three right-handed hitters in a row after maybe the opposing manager has exhausted his bench options, or you get a chance where, okay, maybe you're facing, the three batters you face, two of them are righties, and then you just got to be good enough just to get that one lefty out and not get punished there. But is that alarming to you, just the difference with the splits when it comes to Brendan Hanafy? And is that something that could keep him off the roster? And if Brendan Hanafy is off the roster, well, then you got two spots to fill, and one of them definitely has to be a righty. And like we mentioned, I mean, maybe both of them could be righties. Maybe you could do a righty and a lefty in that situation. But are you overly concerned about Brendan Hanafy and the splits? Like I said, I mean, it is like a 375 batting average for lefties, but only a 220 batting average for righties. Is that enough concern to keep him off the opening day roster? Or do you still think there is a role for him because of the strength against left-handed hitters?
Yeah, I mean, it's a concern for sure. And I know he's been working on a pitch to help him get lefties out. But I mean, there are a couple of things here. Like you touched on it, like there will be times when you want somebody to go face a bunch of really tough right-handed hitters who aren't coming out of the lineup. And it could be, I don't know, most managers now will mix things up like Hinch does with right, left. But you might have a pocket, like say they're facing Toronto. You got George Springer, you got Vlad Guerrero Jr., you got Alejandro Kirk. You want somebody who's going to get righties out in that pocket. They may, like I said, they may spread them apart. But the other thing is, and this is the ugly reality of being a reliever, right, is sometimes you just need somebody to go out there and get beat up a little bit in a game where you're already out of it. And if you have a guy that's kind of a gadget pitcher like that, who's only really effective against those right-handed hitters, he might not pitch all that often. So he could be, just kind of your mop-up guy. And I don't know, it's not a glamorous job at all, but sometimes managers and the teammates really appreciate somebody who can go out there and give you 2 innings just to get the game over with before you put in a position player.
All right, question 2 of the big 2. Let's dig into 2 specific roster questions. Casey Mize or Drew Anderson for the final spot in the rotation. And if you had to send either Parker Meadows or Wenceel Pérez to Triple-A Toledo for Kevin McGonigle, who would it be? So let's start with the first question. Casey Mize or Drew Anderson for the starting rotation?
So, I mean, this is a great test of how much we really care about spring training. Because if it's just based on the eye test and the results in spring, Drew Anderson looks much better than Casey Mize so far this year. And helpfully, they both pitched 8.1 innings, so we can kind of just compare apples to apples. Anderson, 5 hits and 1 walk, no runs, 10 strikeouts in those 8 innings. Mize, 8 hits, 6 runs, only 3 earned, with 3 walks, 2 hit batters, and 4 strikeouts. And then just looking at the stuff and the way they look, Anderson's fastball is harder right now. His breaking balls look better. His kick change appears to be like a legitimate weapon for him. We were kind of curious about that. And so there's all that, like I said, just based on spring. And yet Casey Mize has 440 career innings of average-ish major league starting history, and including 149 last year in an all-star appearance. Like, that's got to be worth something. Drew Anderson has 44 career innings in the big leagues, and they weren't very good. So, maybe Anderson would be a better starter, but maybe he also becomes a really good reliever with what we've seen so far. That could be another great weapon for you. And I think the relative certainty of what you're going to get from Casey Mize wins out here over the sort of volatility you can get from Drew Anderson. But that's where I'd go with that one, even though I've been very impressed with Drew Anderson so far this spring.
The answer is going to be Casey Mize, both for me and for the Tigers. At least that's how it is right now. But yeah, maybe Drew Anderson might be the better option, and maybe the Tigers will think twice about that as we get closer to opening day. As for now, the Tigers are treating Drew Anderson like a reliever, so much so they're giving him specific situations out of the bullpen in spring training. For example, Drew Anderson is going to come out of the bullpen in Wednesday's game against the Twins, but he won't pitch until like the second or third inning. And the goal is to give him an inherited runner just so he can keep practicing what that's like, because he's been a starter in Japan and Korea for the past 4 seasons. So he hasn't had to inherit runners like he is going to have to coming out of the Tigers bullpen in 2026. Meanwhile, Casey Mize is going to start Friday's game against the Pirates. So all of this tells you everything you need to know about where the Tigers are at if there is a Drew Anderson versus Casey Mize conversation that we're having right now. But maybe it should be an internal discussion. Drew Anderson has been phenomenal this spring. 8 1/3 scoreless innings, 1 walk, 10 strikeouts. The fastball is averaging 95 miles an hour. Here's the concern. Hitters have a 308 batting average against his fastball this spring. That's just something to watch. More importantly, that new changeup, the kick change, it has a ridiculous 53% whiff rate. And then he also shows you the curveball and the slider. Like, this guy has been amazing, and he has certainly exceeded my expectations so far. Now, I am curious if MLB hitters in the regular season will be able to hit the changeup when they know it's coming. Like Tarik Skubal, hitters might know it's coming, but they still can't hit it. For Drew Anderson, will he be able to beat hitters in the big leagues consistently with that changeup? Because it looks really nasty and it's performed well so far. But once we get into the season, will hitters either figure out how to lay off it, or will they figure out how to hit it? I think that's the biggest unknown, because if they can hit it, that's a problem. And if they can lay off of it, that's a problem too, because they're just going to feast on his fastball. So those are some like low-key yellow flags that maybe could turn into red flags. We just haven't seen him against quality hitters game in and game out, because hitters in the KBO league are nothing like hitters in MLB. And as we know, hitters in spring training are nothing like hitters in the regular season. So until we see that, game in, game out, how are those hitters in the big leagues, the best of the best, how are they adjusting to Drew Anderson, and how are they reacting to his changeup? Until we see that, I'm going to be cautiously optimistic about Drew Anderson. But so far, really good, and it's been a lot of fun to watch this spring. And Casey Mize, yes, he has struggled, especially with the command, but I'll give him time to lock in the location of his pitches. Once that happens, or maybe I should say if that happens, then I think we'll have a better idea of what to expect from Casey Mize. But the command just isn't there yet, so I don't want to judge him too much. 3 walks in 2 hit batters in 8 1/3 innings, that's just not the Casey Mize that we're used to. He had a 5.7 walk rate last season, and he only hit 3 batters last season. So this is just uncharacteristic in the command department. I think we're going to see a much better version of Casey Mize once he starts locating his pitches. So to answer the question, I'm still Casey Mize over Drew Anderson, but it's definitely something that I think is an interesting debate, and I'm happy we're talking about it right now. The second question, Parker Meadows or Wenceel Pérez? Who gets sent down to Triple-A Toledo if Kevin McGonigle makes the opening day roster?
Well, when McGonigle makes the opening day roster,
let's go.
I think this comes down to probably Meadows' defense versus Wenceel Pérez's switch hitting. He's also an outfielder too, and it's another case where I think Meadows' defense is going to win out here. I go back and forth on this a bunch, but I look at the pitching rotation, and outside of Framber Valdez, there's a fair amount of fly ball pitchers here. Verlander's an extreme fly ball pitcher. Flaherty and Mize are a little bit above average. Skubal is basically average, but I think they may want Meadows to go out there and just track down the fly balls, and at least give him like 5-6 weeks, like they did at the beginning of 2024, right? Like they let him keep playing, even though he was hitting under 100 for a while. He has not looked good in spring. He's not hitting the ball hard. There's a lot of weak contact, a lot of early outs. He's not striking out a ton or swinging and missing a ton, but it just doesn't seem quite right yet. But I still think his defense gives you a better option. And there is the kind of the nerdy front office aspect of this. And it was first pointed out to me by a friend of the show, Mike Smith, former Tigers front office member. He pointed out that Meadows has like 1.1 years of service time and Pérez is at 2. So if they kept Pérez down for a month or whatever, they'd get another year of team control out of him. Like it's kind of a delayed reaction, service time manipulation. And the other thing, and this is just based on what Fangraphs has, Meadows has 1 minor league option and Pérez has 2. So they may just want to retain that optionality if they can. They love that word optionality. So those are the reasons I think they'll go with Meadows, but it would not stun me if it's Perez.
So I've been pretty vocal on this for about a week plus now. I think Parker Meadows needs to be sent down if Kevin McGonigle makes the opening day roster. And I think Parker Meadows ultimately will be sent down if Kevin McGonigle makes the opening day roster. I know you said Parker Meadows above average defense versus Wenceel Pérez's switch hit ability. And while I agree that Meadows' defense is valuable, I think the Tigers want Parker Meadows to be an everyday player, like in the long term. At the same time, I think the Tigers are willing to settle with Wenceel Pérez being a utility player. So if that's the case, is it better for Parker Meadows to continue developing in Triple-A? Maybe that's the case. Right now, Parker Meadows, he's hitting .080. That's 2 for 25 with 3 walks and 9 strikeouts in 10 games, spanning 28 plate appearances. That's 9 games in spring training, 1 exhibition game against Team Panama. Now, Wenceel Pérez hasn't performed much better, but I think the Tigers really value Wenceel Pérez for his switch hit ability. Plus, he can play all 3 outfield positions, albeit he cannot play center field like Parker Meadows can play center field. And Wenceel Pérez actually hit last season. While Parker Meadows, he struggled on offense and defense in his 58 games last season. He hit .215 at the plate, and he posted -1 defensive run saved in center field. So for those reasons, I'm out on Parker Meadows and I'm in on Wenceel Pérez, especially since Javi Baez can play center field. But I do want to be clear, I think Parker Meadows has the upside to be the most valuable player on the Tigers roster. Like when he is at his best, he is a .250 batting average with a 10% walk rate out of the leadoff spot, above average speed on the bases, elite defense in center field. Like that's what Parker Meadows has shown us in small samples. And that's what I believe is his potential, but he's just not there right now. And his swing decisions, they have not been terrible here in spring training. That's actually a positive sign right now, but his swing mechanics, he's just not timed up. Like his timing is a mess. So he looks like he needs a stint in Triple-A Toledo to get things figured out. And once he locks in his timing, I'd expect him to join the Tigers in the big leagues. And then he gets another chance to untap that upside. But this is definitely going to be something to monitor as spring rolls on. We still have some time before opening day on March 26th. The Tigers are going to take these decisions right down to the wire. And that could be the Parker Meadows, Wenceel Pérez decision, or it could be does Kevin McGonigle make the opening day roster? That could be taken right down to the wire as well. So a lot of things are still in play. I'm not counting out Parker Meadows in the long term. I just think that a stint in Triple-A Toledo might be what he needs to get himself back on track and back to the Parker Meadows that we all know he can be, which is a very, very special player. All right, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we are joined by MLB insider Bob Nightengale to talk all things Tarik Skubal, including the latest on the contract situation with Skubal and the Tigers. Everyone, I'd like to welcome Bob Nightengale, USA Today Sports Major League Baseball columnist and insider, to the Days of Roar podcast. We have Bob Nightengale on the show every December to recap the MLB winter meetings, but he is joining us for this episode because there is a lot of Tarik Skubal news to discuss, and this national reporter is right in the middle of it all. Bob Nightengale, thanks for joining the Days of Roar podcast once again.
Sure, my pleasure, Evan.
All right, let's get into the news that you uncovered during your exclusive conversation with Tigers left-hander Tarik Skubal. Now, we know the Tigers offered Tarik Skubal a 4-year contract worth less than $100 million and maybe even less than $80 million in November 2024, just before he won his first Cy Young Award. Of course, Tarik Skubal turned down that non-competitive offer, and then 1 year later, he won his second Cy Young Award in November 2025. But now the 2026 season is here, and it's Tarik Skubal's final year under contract with the Tigers, and he is staring down at least $400 million once he reaches free agency in November 2026. So with all that being said, I'll let you answer the question, have the Tigers made another offer to Tarik Skubal to extend his contract? And what's the latest you're hearing in negotiations between the Tigers and Tarik Skubal?
Yeah, no, Tarik Skubal said there have been no negotiations, no offers, since then. It was actually under $80 million when that offer occurred. He's not expecting one until after the season. He might have even told them, don't bother until after the year. Let me focus on the season. So he's not bothered by it. He's not, gone this far without being a free agent. So now you got a chance to have 30 teams bidding you. So he's going to wait. But yeah, they have not made an offer. And really, once they set that arbitration thing at $19 million, there was no talk, no negotiations after that either.
Are you surprised the Tigers haven't tried to extend Skubal's contract with a competitive offer? Or do you think it's like Skubal's agent is Scott Boras and Scott Boras is preparing for Skubal to become a free agent? And so if you're the Tigers, why even bother trying to make another extension offer? Or do you think the Tigers should have taken a chance this past offseason?
I mean, now it's too late. And they could have taken a chance, but probably realistically they think, what's the point? Might do what the Yankees have always done in the past, like go ahead and hit free agency. You find out what your market is, and we'll see if we want to match it or even top it. I think the Tigers knew that they'd be wasting their time by making an offer because he wasn't going to sign it anyway, not this close to free agency.
You mentioned the Yankees way. Based on everything you've gathered, do you expect the Tigers to be in the bidding war for Tarik Skubal when he becomes a free agent after the 2026 season? Or do you think they're not even going to be in the mix? We can't forget the Tigers signed left-hander Framber Valdez to a 3-year contract, which is really a 2-year contract with a player option. So the Tigers already know they'll have Framber Valdez in place to replace Tarik Skubal in 2027. Maybe the Valdez signing reveals quite a bit about how the Tigers feel about Skubal's upcoming free agency.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a smart move, shrewd move by Tigers to do that. Now they have their ace when Skubal leaves. I think they'll be in the bidding. Do I think they'll be the top bidder? No. I think you'll have a few teams offering more, but they're certainly going to be, hanging around and see if they have a chance. But I think the fact they got Framber Valdez is, hey, he's going to replace Tarik Skubal. A market like Detroit, you're not going to have two guys making that kind of money. So I'd be shocked if Skubal goes back to Detroit.
So what's your latest prediction for Tarik Skubal's free agency? How many years, how much money, and to what team?
I think, not a shocker. I think it goes to Dodgers. I really do. I'm not going to roll out the Yankees or Mets. Let's give me one of those three teams. I think he gets, over $400 million. I think he falls shy of 500. So I'll go 9 years at $450, $50 million a year. It's another record. Obviously, he's going to blow away past Garrett Cole's 9 years at 324. So yeah, common sense would tell you it's going to be that Dodgers, that they need some more pitching, and Yankees and Mets will be involved for sure.
Before we shift gears to the World Baseball Classic, I also want to get your thoughts on Tarik Skubal defeating the Tigers in the early February arbitration hearing, securing the $32 million salary for 2026 instead of the Tigers' proposed salary of $19 million. Largest gap in arbitration history. Tarik Skubal wins. What did you think about the case? And then what did you think about the result?
I thought it was a fascinating case. And when you win a Cy Young Award, let alone two, you don't have to you can compare yourself to anybody in the market, kind of a special provision award. So they've done that in the past. I remember Brett Saberhagen did it back in the day when he won a Cy Young. And so in this case, he said, you know what? He could have gotten higher if he wanted to. He said, am I going to be worth $11 million less than what Justin Verlander got, Max Scherzer got from the Mets a couple years ago when they were making $43 a year? So I was surprised the Tigers didn't try to come up at least in the low 20s. You had to go over 20 for sure. And, I think MLB was advising him, like, stay pat, you think you'll win. But it was just too easy to go to that midpoint at 25.5. If the Tigers had to offer around, low 20s, then I think it might have been a different story. But yeah, that's the whole thing. And I'm sure Paul Skeens is thanking Tarik Skubal every single day, because if Skubal's making that kind of money, what in the world is Skeens going to get? The fact that Tarik Skubal could, compare himself to anybody with the special provision that he got the Cy Young Award, let alone two of them. Brett Saberhagen did that back in the day with the Royals in the mid-'80s. So at that point, you're not comparing yourself to 5-year players. You can do it to anybody in baseball. In this case, Justin Verlander or Max Scherzer were just coming off $43 million deals a couple of years ago. Yeah, I think the Tigers should have gone over 20. It might have made a difference, particularly low 20s, but just the fact he only had to be over 25.5, the midpoint, I think it was an easy case for Scott Boras and his people.
How about Tarik Skubal in the World Baseball Classic and the saga that surrounds that situation? He was only going to make one start, but now he is considering making a second start, even though the Tigers, Team USA, agent Scott Boras, and Skubal himself agreed on just one start in the WBC. As of Monday morning, Skubal hadn't returned to Tigers camp as he initially was supposed to. What's going on here? What's your read on this situation?
I mean, Team USA plays Mexico on Monday night. I think he wants to witness that. Should be an epic game. I think he returns to Tiger camp in Lakeland, Florida to pitch on March 12th. That's just a game against the Yankees in Lakeland. Then I think he might return to the WBC. If you need me for the championship game, I'm here. If you don't make the championship game, fine. Go back to Lakeland. I think he wants to hang around the guys. With the semifinals and finals being in Miami, as he said, just a 3-hour drive. I think he goes back to Lakeland, pitches a one game for Tigers, and then if they make the finals, he's there for USA.
So here's what's very interesting, and I want to get your live reaction to this. I've heard that there won't be a decision from Skubal until the end of pool play when teams have to reset their rosters. In the World Baseball Classic, now there's a universal off day for the WBC on March 12th before the single elimination stage begins with the quarterfinals. That would be the normal 4 days rest for Skubal. But the Tigers had Justin Verlander scheduled to start that day, March 12th in spring training. And then Casey Mize is scheduled to start the next day. So when is Tarik Skubal going to pitch? As we sit here on Monday morning, I don't know. But Team USA plays its quarterfinal game on March 13th, so he could pitch then. That would be on 5 days rest. To me, I think Tarik Skubal starting for Team USA on March 13th, that might make the most sense. And then he would start March 20th for the Tigers in spring training, and then he would start March 26th for the Tigers on opening day in the regular season. I know that was a lot to digest, but if Justin Verlander is scheduled to start March 12th in spring training, Casey Mize is scheduled to start March 13th in spring training, yes, Tarik Skubal could throw on the backfields, but maybe it'll be March 13th with Team USA in the quarterfinal game for Tarik Skubal's next start. Does that even make sense to you, or do you still think this is a one and done situation here?
I think he goes back to Lakeland and pitches March 12th and, makes his regular start, against the Yankees that day. Him and Verlander can pitch the same day, doesn't matter. And then rejoins the team. If they need him for the finals on the 17th, he's there for him. Remember now, Logan Webb is scheduled to start this quarterfinal game on March 13th. Then they don't have another game for 2 days. You're not going to mess up Logan Webb. I mean, he pitched the opener just for Skubal. So I think he pitches March 12th for the Tigers, returns to WBC. If they need him for the finals, he's there for him. I know people talking about opening day, but it's not opening day in Detroit. It's opening day in San Diego. They could easily adjust the schedule like, you know what, let's have him for opening day at Tiger Stadium. It means a lot more to Tiger fans than opening day in San Diego.
As for the Team USA start that Skubal already made, it was March 7th against Great Britain. Skubal gave up a lead-up home run on the first pitch. It was a fastball to Nate Eaton. That was in the first inning. And then he shoved 3 innings, 0 walks, 5 strikeouts, 41 pitches. When you talked to Skubal in your exclusive conversation, did you get a sense for what pitching for Team USA meant to him, especially because he didn't get a chance to wear USA across his chest when he was coming up in high school or college, like a lot of his Team USA teammates?
Yeah, just being around the guys. It means everything, putting on the uniform. I know it's not the Olympics, but, it's baseball's version of the Olympics. And guys take so much pride, particularly other countries. But yeah, I think just being around the fellas, and that was what USA's thought was originally, like when he's around here, is he really going to leave? It makes it tough. It's just a bonding thing. You're at the same hotel. You don't have to be at the ballpark until about 3:30. Because their games are being played. So times for the families to get together and everything else. Everybody's having the time of their lives. And I think same thing with Skubal, with his family and everything else. Really, do I want to leave this and go back to Lakeland? Every player says the same thing. It's such a, I'm not saying depressing, but such a letdown when you go back to your camp after being with in the World Baseball Classic.
You mentioned those relationships that have been formed. The people in that room, my goodness, there are some very impressive names. Aside from Skubal, what has it been like for you just to follow Team USA and cover Team USA in the World Baseball Classic? You could argue this is probably the best baseball team ever assembled. It is just superstar after superstar, with Tarik Skubal being one of those superstars.
Yeah, it's fun to get to know guys. Like you said, there hasn't been much media at all in Houston. I think it's going to pick up versus Team Mexico. Obviously, semifinals and finals, they'll be packed in Miami. Games in Houston are fun, but I wish every game was in Miami. Miami's just an electric atmosphere, particularly when the Latin American countries are involved. So this would be a big one with Mexico. Mexico is, the team in Houston. USA be the underdog, when they play them thing because of the fans. But yeah, it's just you get to know guys, you get to see them a lot. And like you said, there's very few people around, media around. So you actually get to know guys, then, stay a relationship. And I think the players on those WBC teams, they stay connected forever. And they're always on text strands and stuff like that. And they kind of form a bond that they don't forget.
Before we get you out of here, and we really appreciate all of your time, I want to ask about the 2026 Detroit Tigers. They brought back Gleyber Torres, Jack Flaherty, and Kyle Finnegan. And then they added Framber Valdez, Justin Verlander, and Kenley Jansen. And they have top prospect Kevin McGonigle on the way. What do you think about the Tigers entering the 2026 season?
Well, I think the Tigers could easily get to, not say easily, could get to the World Series. Finally get back there. Maybe even win it for the first time since '84. But I think, on paper, you got the Tigers, you got the Mariners, and probably Toronto Blue Jays, almost a coin flip. I love the fact that they got Framber Valdez. Verlander's going to help too. But I think it's a star-studded rotation. And talking to Tarik Skubal in Phoenix, he's fired up. He says, this is the first time he actually felt like we got a World Series team. Before I thought it was a good team, but now it's almost World Series or bust. So I think the expectations are great. And I think, they'll make some moves at the trade deadline too if they have to. And knowing that, hey, if this is Skubal's last year, let's take advantage of it. We don't want him to spend 6 years here and not having gotten the World Series.
All right, Bob Nightengale, that is all we have for you. Thank you so much for joining the Days of Roar podcast and providing us with an update on all things Tarik Skubal, plus some other important topics. We'll catch up with you again down the road.
Sounds good. Take care, Evan.
Everyone, that was Bob Nightengale, USA Today Sports Major League Baseball columnist and insider. We have more to discuss this week as spring training rolls on. But first, let's take a break. We're back. Thanks again to Bob Nightengale for joining us to talk all things Tarik Skubal. Now, Chris, let's do some prospect talk. The Tigers rolled out their 40-player roster for the spring breakout prospect game. Who are the notable names on the list, and what do you think about this group as a whole? And additionally, who are some of the names not on the list because they're injured?
Well, yeah, I mean, you got the big names here. You got McGonigle and Clark are there. Who knows if McGonigle will actually play if he's vying for a big league job. And Briseño's on there. He's injured. He's not going to play. Bryce Rayner was kind of the notable absence there. He is back and participating in minor league backfield action, but he isn't playing the field yet. So I think they probably didn't want him to. This is kind of like a mini version of that Skubal Team USA thing. Like you could pretend like it's a game that doesn't matter, but when you're out there and you're facing the Pirates and Connor Griffin, who is in the same draft class as you, and he's the number one prospect in baseball, you might overexert yourself and do some harm. So I think they want to keep him out of that. And then the other people that are missing are some of the more prominent pitchers in the Tiger system. Andrew Sears, we've talked about before. Kelvis Salcedo is not there. I am assuming that these guys are relatively healthy, and it's more like this just not their day to pitch, or they pitched the day before, or something like that. It's the same idea that they would have in the big leagues. And then the names that I'm personally interested in watching are the young guys. Jordan Yost, Michael Oliveto. They're 2 first-round picks from last year. This is the first chance we're going to get to see them. And you got Cris Rodriguez, who, is a big-time, the most expensive international signing they've ever made, and tons and tons of power. It'll be fun to see him go out there and see what he does against most likely some pitchers who are about 4 years older than him. So I'm really excited to see those young guys play. And then this is my jam. I'm a huge prospect nerd. I could talk for 5 minutes about every single one of these guys if we had to, but I'm not going to make people endure that.
Well, just to set the table, the Tigers, they're playing the Pirates in this prospect-only showcase. It's scheduled for 7:35 p.m., March 20th at Lecom Park in Bradenton, Florida. That's the spring breakout game. And yeah, the roster is loaded with talent. When you look at the 40 players on the roster, it includes 19 prospects from the Tigers' top 30 list, as ranked by MLB Pipeline. Got Kevin McGonigle, number 1, Max Clark, number 2, Jose Briseño, number 4, Max Anderson, number 5, Hao-Yu Lee, number 6, Thyron Lorenzo, number 7, Cris Rodriguez, number 8, Jordan Yost, number 9, Michael Oliveto, number 13, John Peck, number 15, Lucas Ellisault, number 18. Ty Madden, number 20. Dylan Smith, number 21. Isaac Pacheco, number 22. Jude Warwick, number 24. Eduardo Valencia, number 25. Trey Cruz, number 26. Nick Dumpsnell, number 27. And Jackson Strong, number 29. You pointed out 3 names, and they were the young kids. You mentioned Cris Rodriguez. You mentioned Jordan Yost. You mentioned Michael Oliveto. Tell me more about those 3 players, and not just what you're looking to see out of them in this prospect-only showcase game, because it's just one game. But what are your thoughts on the upside, the potential, what they could be? Because I think that's what Tigers fans are looking forward to is, yes, it's early. No, we have not seen them in stateside affiliated games yet, but we're about to. And the big question is going to be, what can Cris Rodriguez be? What can Jordan Yost be? What can Michael Oliveto be? What are some of your thoughts there as we project ahead to when these guys are one day, wearing the Old English D at Comerica Park, making their MLB debuts?
Yeah, I with Yost, it's funny. Yost and Oliveto were both kind of under the radar draft picks, if you will, and I just everything about them is kind of a mystery. Yost is sort of projected to be this hit first plus athlete plus runner who could play shortstop. I'd like to see how physical he looks. Can he put a charge in the ball? What's his plate appearance look like? Is he gonna get too anxious, or is he gonna be immature approach? And Oliveto is this catcher from the Northeast who probably hasn't faced much advanced pitching in his life, and I'm curious to see how he handles, because they're going to get some nasty pitchers from the Pirates. I want to see how he handles these 98 mile an hour fastballs and nasty breaking balls. And then Cris Rodriguez, it's sort of the same story. This is a kid who I don't even know he's 18 yet, but just as much power as anybody in the entire Tigers system. And I mean that. He's put up exit velocities that are absurd for a teenager. And the main problem with him is that he basically swung at everything in the Dominican Summer League. So what I'd like to see from him is just a little bit of patience. Lay off a couple pitches and then hit one 450 feet. That would be ideal. But it's always fun to see these young guys and see, at this time last year, we hadn't seen Bryce Rayner at all. And I was like, I wonder if they're hiding him. Are they worried about him? And then he comes to the spring breakout game and hits like 3 scuds. And you're like, oh, all right. And that just kind of told us what he became. He became this sort of exit velocity machine until he got hurt. So yeah, you can, and 2 years ago, it was Josue Briseño who hit a ball like 111, 112 miles an hour in the spring breakout. And suddenly everybody, their ears perked up. Hey, this guy can really hit. So we might find something out just in a couple of bats that changes our perspective on any of these guys.
What about some of the pitchers? Because we've talked a lot about how the Tigers farm system, it is lacking pitching, specifically starting pitching. I'm talking about. There are some names here. Lucas Ellisalt, Ty Madden. We've seen Ty Madden flash a little bit here in spring training, and obviously he was sent out early. The Tigers wanted him to be a starter in Triple-A Toledo. That's a name to watch for 2026 and beyond. But aside from Ty Madden, who are some of the starters that are going to be on this spring breakout roster, possibly playing in this spring breakout game to keep an eye on? Two names that kind of pop off the page to me is Lucas Ellisalt and Joe Miller. Maybe they could be something, but who do we have here from a starting pitching standpoint? And is there anybody who you project ahead and say, yeah, that guy could be a starter for the Tigers one day? Or do you think there's really nobody on this list outside of maybe Ty Madden?
Yeah, Ellisalt is the one who really stands out to me. And you still have to dream on a little bit because his velocity isn't quite there, but he does everything else. He's really fun to watch. He's like 6'4", pretty skinny, and his fastball is only like 90, 92. But it still works up in the zone because he gets, it's got a lot of ride to it, and he knows how to use it. And he's got the best curveball probably in the organization, or at least in the minors. It's a really good. It's not very hard, but it's really deceptive. It's got a lot of depth. He's got a solid changeup. He throws a lot of strikes. It's all there except for the velocity. And I would love it if we see him popping a couple 93, 94, 95, because if he does that, he could move relatively quickly. This is a 13th rounder from 2024 out of Chipola Junior College. So yeah, he's really fun. And his brother, he was traded, but his brother was in the Mets organization and he does throw harder. So you could kind of cross your fingers and hope for it. But yeah, I want to see how he handles some of these talented Pirates hitters. And then yeah, like there are a couple starting pitchers on the list that we were at Tigers Minor League Report. We were really high on heading into the 2025 season, and they had kind of down years. One of them is Rainer Castillo, who 2 years ago was kind of the Kelvis Salcedo, if that makes sense. He was throwing 96, 97 mile an hour sinkers with a really nice slider and just carving up low A hitters. And then last year, his velocity, he dropped like 3 miles an hour and the slider was slow and loopy and he just didn't look good in West Michigan. So I'm curious to see which Reiner Castillo we get. And then there's Gabriel Reyes, who's another guy we're really high on, we thought he'd be in West Michigan last year. And instead he started in the complex league, or basically extended spring, and then spent all year in Lakeland again. But he's a fun lefty who's got a kind of deceptive angle, got a pretty good slider, got a pretty good changeup. And he's the guy that I could see moving relatively quickly too, if they kind of unleash him. So just hoping to get to see those guys. But again, this is the player pool. We don't actually know if they're going to be on the final roster or if we'll see them at all. But yeah, some interesting arms out there, but no real monsters just yet.
The spring breakout game for the prospects is March 20th, and then opening day for the big leaguers is March 26th. We are just 16 days away from the start of the regular season for the Tigers. All right, it's time for all of us to get out of here. Thanks to Chris Brown from Tigers Minor League Report for co-hosting with me this week. And thanks to everyone for listening to the latest episode of Days of Roar. Please like, rate, share, and subscribe. Give us a rating and comment what you think about the show. Stick with freep.com/sports for the latest Tigers coverage. I'd like to thank the editor of the Free Press, Nicole Avery Nichols, and our magical producer, Robin Chan. For the Detroit Free Press, I'm Evan Petzold. We'll catch you next week. Until then, go in peace.